You've probably seen a ride where passengers sit in logs. There's log rides everywhere. Little amusement parks have them. Disney has them. They even have them at some traveling fairs. But I mean, seriously, log rides are weird. How often are you sitting by a river and you look out in the water and you see a log floating by with people sitting on it? That does not happen. That is not how reality works. And yet, all around the world, there's tons of rides where people sit in logs. So what historical context led to the log ride? And why are there so many of them around the world? Ever since amusement parks decided that they wanted to commercialize the experience of floating in water at an amusement park setting, water rides have existed. So, since the late 1800s. Two early water ride types led to the log flumes of today. And the second is much cooler than the first, in my opinion, but whatever. The earliest water rides are considered to be the old mill rides. Many of these old mill rides were comprised of themed tunnels, and some of these were called tunnels of love because they went through dark tunnels that were cozy. In those days, physical contact in public was frowned upon in polite society, but in the darkness of a tunnel of love, there was no polite society looking at you, now was there? Couples could do romantic private things, like, hug and hold hands. Wait, what were you thinking? Other variations of the old mill ride type were less love-focused, but what makes the old mill ride type important to the log flume is the variation of it called the mill chute. Mill chute rides were later old mill types emerging after World War I. These were old mill rides, but with a little drop at the end. But there's a second, much more awesome historical ride that led to the log flumes of today, and they still make these rides. Shoot the chutes. The first Shoot the Chute ride was built in 1884, and that ride was basically a boat was pulled up a ramp, it was turned around at the top, and then it went down the same ramp and splashed into a pool of water. I mean, that was it. These two ride types, however, paved the way for the log flume. In the 1960s, aero development, later aerodynamics, was a pioneer in the theme park industry. Aero developed the log flume ride. A log flume is a ride type where you sit on a log and you float through an elevated trough. I'm sure you've all seen one, or probably been on one. But the flume thing isn't really supposed to be a river, it's supposed to be something else, which I'll talk about later. Aero created the log flume concept essentially by combining the calm floating motion of the old mill rides with the big drop of the Shoot the Chute. And the first ever log flume opened in Six Flags Over Texas in 1963. And the concept was a hit. Six Flags Over Texas could not keep up with the demand, so they ended up building a second log flume right next to their original log flume 5 years later. And other amusement parks around the world took note and wanted a version of their own. Throughout the 1960s and 1980s, there were a ton of log flumes built. And it wasn't just Aero Development who made log flumes. Other ride manufacturers sort of copied them and made versions of their own. But here's the real question. Why logs? What historical context led to the log ride becoming a phenomenon all around the world? Aero Development did not just come up with the idea of floating on a log randomly. After trees are cut down now, logs are transported on trucks or through trains or whatever. But back in the late 1800s, the world was not nearly as connected with transportation as we are now. There were areas of the late 1800s, specifically the Pacific Northwest of the United States of America, where the roads really weren't built up or the rivers were not adequate for log transportation. So the loggers decided to build their own river of sorts to efficiently transport logs to a lumber mill. Log flumes started out as big troughs with water flowing through them. Loggers would throw the cut down trees into the flume, and then the logs would float down the flume, eventually making their way to the lumber mill. Sounds like an easy enough concept, but it definitely had some complications, which led to the log flume ride. First of all, logs could get jammed in the flume, and when that happened, the logs got backed up, and if there was a dam, then water would spill out over the sides of the log flume, and then you would just have logs cascading off of a broken. To prevent this, people known as flume herders would ride in carved out logs, or custom boats designed for the flume to ensure that there were no jams. And if there was a jam, they would unclog the jam and continue their way to the lumber mill. Hence, the idea where the log flume ride came from. Amusement parks around the world don't always build the same kind of ride though. Often, they compete with one another. If you want to know more about the coaster wars and the absolute monstrosity of roller coasters they left behind, please click on this video next. And thanks for watching.